Culinary heavy hitters serve up top-notch dishes for a chance to be called the Queen City's best. A look back at the lives of two legendary political figures in both Cincinnati and the world.
I'm getting text messages from guys who don't have my number saying, welcome to the squad. We're all really excited to have you.
So are we, Nick. So are we. Hear from the latest in the Reds' historic spending spree. First Financial Biz Beat starts right now. Good morning and welcome to First Financial Biz Beat, presented by the Business Courier. I'm Kyla Woods. All eyes will be on Macy's this week as the Cincinnati headquartered company lays out its three-year plan for investors. On this week's front page centerpiece are more closures in store for the beleaguered department store giant. Before everyone sounds the alarm on Macy's imminent demise, it's important to point out that the company posted more than $1 billion in profit in 2018 and is doing better than most department store chains. But last month, the company announced a couple dozen closures, including the Northgate location. Now investors want to know how Macy's will keep the department store relevant in the age of Amazon and how it will engage customers, as many of the malls its stores call home are dying. And that is exactly what Courier reporter Andy Brownfield tackles in this cover story. He's with Business Courier publisher Jamie Smith to talk about what's in store for Macy's. Hi, guys.
Thanks, Kyla. Andy, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So as she said, they've announced 29 closures now, including Northgate. Talk a little bit about that and what we found out about that.
Well, it was all really hush-hush. At the beginning of the year, they started telling store associates that their stores would be closing in the first quarter, but they didn't really put out anything publicly. I mean, last time they did something like this, they put out a press release saying they were closing 100 locations, and this time it was all very quiet.
Okay.
And we in the media kind of pieced together that there were 28 Macy's and 1 Bloomingdale's that would be closing. And Macy's, for its part, would acknowledge those closings, but said, hey, for more, just wait for this Investor Day, which is happening on February 5th.
Okay. Now, they talked a little bit about expanding their Growth 150 stores. And I think Kenwood is one of those Growth 150 stores. Talk about what that is and what that means.
Well, yeah, a lot of people are expecting that they're going to talk about their strategy overall for their stores at this upcoming Investor Day. And with 680 stores, and I believe that's just Macy's locations, they've got a pretty full stable. Now, in the last couple of years, they have started this program called Growth 150, where they've invested millions of dollars into their stores, including Kenwood, as you mentioned. And these stores are getting new lights, new departments in some cases, new flooring, new fixtures. It's all to make them look very modern and nice and help just shoppers feel like they're really getting a premium experience as befitting of Macy's.
Okay.
So it's expected that at this meeting, they will probably announce that they're going to be expanding this initiative to other of their top performing stores. But then, as with the 29 stores that they've announced closing so far this year, they're probably going to have to call a couple more or many more. In fact, some analysts suggest that they may be closing 30 stores a year.
Okay. Just to keep where they need to be.
Yeah.
Well, anytime they talk about Macy's closing, we obviously lost Fountain Square not long ago, Northgate. Obviously, we've got a big office here. There's always discussion, if they keep going away, are we going to lose that corporate office here? What are they saying?
Well, Macy's, for its part, is not really saying much. They say, keep posted for this Investor Day. But, I talked to a corporate headquarters relocation expert who said that it would be counterintuitive for Macy's to pull out of Cincinnati. For one, they have a bifurcated headquarters in New York and Cincinnati, but real estate costs in Manhattan are just astronomical, not to mention the cost of talent and operations. So he suggested that it'd probably be wise of Macy's to keep their Cincinnati headquarters, at least for the time being.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I know we can trust you to keep us posted on all the things happening after this release is next week, their meeting?
Yeah, next Wednesday.
Okay, so I'm sure we'll hear more, but I hope our viewers take time to look at your story. It was a great story, well written, covered a lot of angles that you don't think about. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
All right. Kyla, back to you.
Thank you. Mercy Health expects 2020 to be a banner year. The Cincinnati-based hospital system thinks it will generate $10 billion in revenue, a 17% increase from last year. A lot of that has to do with the 2018 merger with Bon Secours. That union means Mercy has 50 hospitals in the U.S. and 5 in Ireland. It's also given them an opportunity to cut significant costs without getting rid of many jobs. Greater Cincinnati is losing a Best Buy. The last day for the store on East Kemper Road in Springdale will be March 7th. Best Buy leaders tell us they decided not to renew the lease due to declining retail traffic in the area. There are no plans to reopen in a new location. Best Buy still has 6 other stores in the area. There's a new CEO at the United Way of Greater Cincinnati. Maura Ware will be the first woman to lead the organization when she takes over in March. She's leaving Hamilton County Job and Family Services, where she's been for 27 years, the last 12 as director. Ware says the opportunity gives her more time with families on a broader scale. And Cincinnati is mourning the loss of 2 legendary figures. Before serving on the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals for decades, Judge Nathaniel Jones was the first African-American to be an assistant United States attorney in Ohio. The civil rights icon also consulted with Nelson Mandela after Mandela was released from prison. And the civil rights icon helped end apartheid in South Africa. Former Hamilton County Municipal Court Judge Fanon Rucker calls Judge Jones a friend and mentor.
He grew up in a time where the reality of what he experienced required him to have a different perspective and to respond to it in a different way. But by opening the doors that he did, for those of us like me, we don't have to accept anything other than the respect that's due. That's important to me.
Todd Portune was known as a man who could work across the aisle to get things done. The longtime commissioner and born and raised West Sider was elected to public office decades ago and never looked back. The football star turned track standout dealt with serious health problems throughout his adult life, but he never slowed down. And his peers say no one in the last decade has had a bigger impact on the direction of the community.
Todd was an incredibly intense person. He was a person who, when he locked onto an issue, he really locked onto it, and he really cared about those issues. He cared about people, but he really cared about issues too.
Portune was 61 years old. A funeral and a public visitation for him will be held on Monday morning. An epic food fight downtown carried a little extra meaning this year. Some of the best chefs in the city squared off in the annual cooking competition this year at Kroger on the Rhine. Well, what was different this year was the attire. It was a sea of plaid, a tribute to Cincinnati's red and black lumberjack. PJ Newman was the owner of Boomtown Biscuits. He died earlier this month.
PJ had a huge heart, and he would do anything for anyone. Anytime something happened or, you know, there was an issue, biscuits show up at your door.
Fittingly, Boomtown's executive chef, Christian Gill, was one of the winners. His winning dish, sweet and spicy tostada with a salmon ceviche. Speaking of food, you'll soon notice quite a few changes at CVG. Starting next year, the airport is replacing 2 Starbucks locations with Dunkin'. Chick-fil-A will move across the food court to where Torn Basil is currently located, and Fuzzy's Taco Shop will move into the old Chick-fil-A space. Panda Express will be replaced with a made-to-order sandwich spot, and a Kickin' Boots Bourbon Kitchen will be the local restaurant in Concourse A. The changes come on the heels of a record-setting year for CVG. 4.3 million local passengers used the airport last year, a 42% increase over the year before. And it's not often you see men in their 50s playing hockey, real hockey, pads, pucks, and the occasional check into the boards. Peter Kubasik plays every week. The founder of Blue Ash-based Arc Malibu says the time on the ice gives him a necessary work-life balance and helps him keep his cool.
You don't have the opportunity to live life twice. And if you don't take the time to relax and extend your health, then you're not going to finish well.
Great advice there, and it's tough to have a better year than the Cincinnati Pops conductor, John Morris Russell. He and producer Elaine Martone both earned Grammy nominations for that project you heard there. The Pops recorded the Grammy-nominated American Originals 1918 live at Music Hall. Russell says it's hard to describe in one sentence what the CD is about.
These are all tunes that everyone knows. And when you have the full breadth and power of the Cincinnati Pops, you have all of those different instruments, all of the different colors, all of the different textures that we can create when you've got 95 of the most extraordinary musicians on the planet on stage making it happen.
The orchestra also extended Russell's contract through 2023. Russell has 2 this weekend at Music Hall. Gershwin's Spectacular Rhapsody in Blue is tonight at 8 and tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. Up next on First Financial Biz Beat, a Bruce Willis spotting in Greater Cincinnati. The latest movie bringing him back to the Queen City. The Reds appear to be all in this season. The team has spent a record $164 million on 4 free agents this winter. The latest signing, outfielder Nick Castellanos. Castellanos brings a potent bat and a warning about hype.
On paper, we're fantastic, but I've learned the hard way that on paper it really doesn't mean nothing, man. So, like, to have a great team and to get everybody together and talk about winning, unfortunately, doesn't mean anything. So, like, it's up to us to go out and do it.
Well, forgive us for buying into the hype, but sports writers are too. Some even saying the Reds are contenders to win the division. I guess we'll see. The Reds are suddenly willing to open up their wallets, leading to an historic spending spree. It fits right in with what's going on in the market, as we're in the midst of the best bull market ever. In The Scoop this week, First Financial's Chris Hagedorn and Kirk Copenhaver discuss what we can expect moving forward in 2020. They're on set with Business Courier publisher Jamie Smith.
Welcome, guys. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Good. Chris, we're going to start with you. In a recent commentary, you had written that 2019 was different than the typical, what we've seen typically throughout this last decade. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So that's right. 2019 was different. Not only did we have exceptional returns, but it was really about how those returns were generated. And so, you know, if you think about the price return of the S&P 500 over this decade-long bull market, what we've typically seen, the predominant portion of the return really derived by earnings per share growth, how fast companies have been growing, and a much smaller component being driven by multiple expansion or what investors have been willing to pay. Last year it was different. It was the exact opposite. So earnings growth slowed significantly. The majority of the return was a function of valuations rising. And so we think that sentiment, that might suggest that sentiment had been slowly beginning to improve for equities. That's important because it's been a missing ingredient for the entirety of this bull market. And while we would certainly say sentiment has come off the boil here with the recent coronavirus headlines, we do think that's important to watch as things evolve.
Okay. Now, Kirk, corporate profits have always been a major influence on the markets. How do you think that's going to play out?
Yeah, we think it's going to be critical here in 2020. Actually, it's the backbone for one of our major investment themes this year, a stutter step or a stumble. And, you know, what does that mean? Well, in 2018, earnings growth really accelerated in that double-digit territory. 2009, earnings growth slowed to a crawl. So the million-dollar question for 2020 is which way is it going to go next? Is this pause just kind of a stutter step to another period of reacceleration? Or is it going to be a stumble in a full-fledged earnings recession? You know, right now it's not conclusive, but some of the leading indicators in the market performance, like Chris referenced, is kind of signaling that we may have seen a bottom in profit growth. The key is, though, if we do get into a period of reacceleration, you don't want to be too defensive in your portfolios.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. Chris, are there other investment themes that we should be thinking about, or any that you want to highlight?
Sure. So our second investment theme for 2020 is what we're calling the rising wall of vol. Vol being short for volatility. And so it's just the idea that there are a number of signposts that would also suggest that we see higher as opposed to lower volatility going forward. And if you think about it being in an aging business cycle as one signpost, we all know 2020 is a presidential election year. That's another one. And then also we would say the yield curve, which is just the difference between long-term and short-term interest rates, historically has actually been a very good leading indicator for stock volatility. And so the fact that the curve has been flattening over the past several years would suggest we could see that rise in volatility. And so that's important, of course, because it would suggest you might not want to be overly aggressive in that kind of setup either.
Okay. So you guys have given us some great information, but at the end of the day, what's this mean for investors?
Yeah, so great question. So I think, you know, if you put both of those themes together, you know, you could see the opportunity for earnings to reaccelerate, but also volatility to rise. So we would say, you know, don't get overly aggressive, don't be overly defensive. Key word for 2020, in our opinion, is you want to stay balanced, or what we would call barbell, meaning You want to maintain some overweight to kind of your favorite risk assets, but you want to balance that out with a more conservative securities as well. And I think the bottom line is, look, we think the time to really have increased risk in one's portfolio was probably 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Okay.
Today, we would be much more neutrally oriented, which I think is consistent with kind of these themes that we talked about.
Well, we're super excited to have First Financial as a part of this program, and really excited to have you guys in here a lot to keep us posted. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Kyla, back to you.
Thank you, guys. Still to come on First Financial Biz Beat, Hollywood is back in Cincinnati, where Bruce Willis was spotted this past week. And congratulations to Henry Frondor, the VP of Pre-Construction for LRT Restoration Technologies, is our latest 40 Under 40 honoree. It's a big week for car lovers in Cincinnati. The Car Expo kicks off at the Duke Energy Center. Charlie Howard leads the group behind the event. He's been a car guy since he was a kid. His first job was helping his dad at his veterinary practice when he was 5 years old. He saved up his $1-a-day pay for an electric car from Sears, and he says you'll see all kinds of cool cars at the expo.
You'll see crossovers, SUVs, trucks, and cars. You'll see the latest configurations with the ever-evolving technology. It really is the best place to compare the vehicles and models you may have some awareness with many that you may not know nearly as well.
Here's a plot twist. Howard never got that car. Instead, he bought a lamb from a neighbor. His family was in the sheep business for decades. As for the Auto Expo, that starts on Wednesday. Bruce Willis is back in the Queen City. He's in a movie called Open Source that started shooting this week. Willis plays a wealthy businessman who hires a team of mercenaries to guard a piece of technology that has the potential to destroy the world. This is the 4th movie in Cincinnati for Willis in the last 5 years. The action star even took some time to take pictures with a couple Norwood police officers, too. A local craft brewery is playing a part in adding to the Little Miami Scenic Trail. A new section from Newtown Road to the Walton Creek Bridge should be open by May. It will have direct access to 50 West Brewing's new burger and beer garden. There is also the possibility of developing the trail to the Marymount Public Library. And some friends in Montgomery are getting into the business of making people happy. That's what the MPH stands for in MPH Brewing. The city's first craft brewery will be opening in the Old Pomodori's. The idea came from their time spent at pubs in England. On top of the European beers, there will be pizza, salads, brats, and charcuterie boards. The plan is to open in March. Well, Monday is the Courier's Biz Women Mentoring Day. Women all around Greater Cincinnati will have the chance to be coached by some of the region's most influential women in our community. I have the honor of speaking along with our next guest, Summer Crenshaw, who's the co-founder of Tiller. Summer, thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we're speaking at Mentoring Monday, which we're both really passionate about, just mentoring young professionals, mentoring women. What are some things that you have kind of found yourself, maybe advice that you found yourself giving to other women, just in the corporate world or just in life in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I've learned over time is that we truly can paint our picture, and what I mean by that is we can paint the end goal, and sometimes that takes a little leaning into other women to help us pave the way. So we really need champions that are helping us throughout our career, so that we have somebody that is there for us to be kind of a hero, and help lead the way for us to go forward in our future positions in different organizations.
Yeah, and I agree. We do need those kind of role models, champions, advocates. Often we can get caught up in this notion of comparison. We're not where we should be. We're not where so-and-so is. How do you combat that in your own life and career?
Yeah, I joke. Obviously, my name is Summer, so I always talk about seasons. We all have these different seasons in our lives, and sometimes our end goal might not be a linear path to get there. So if we take these little detours in our career, that's okay. Oftentimes, that hindsight's going to show you that you you needed that in order to build to where you're going in the future.
Yeah. Oh, that's so important. So tell us about Tiller. Like, how, you know, how did you help come up with that concept? What is the work you're doing in Greater Cincinnati and across the country?
Yeah, so my passion is really rooted in serving the underserved population. So I grew up in a very low-income family, and I saw people around me unable to get jobs. So I wanted to create a new technology that would address the bias that's in the recruitment technology today. So Tiller's really a marketplace for jobs that gives the control to the individual. By connecting companies to job seekers, what we're able to do is automatically match it and give the power to the individual to accept or decline an offer instead of going through the traditional process. So this way we can eliminate bias in recruitment.
Yeah, and so you're really looking to empower those individuals, which often when you're applying for a job or seeking opportunities, you feel like you don't have the power.
Absolutely.
You feel like the power lies in the hands of those who are selecting you or possibly selecting you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
What made you come up with that as a notion, and how does it feel to know that you are having that sort of effect on people's lives?
Yeah, it's extraordinary, some of the momentum that we've seen. We're now in over 30 cities across the United States. We started here in Cincinnati. The seed came from myself and my co-founder's background at CareerBuilder.com back in the very early 2000s. And we saw the evolution and the transformation. So we really wanted to ride on some of the trends that we were seeing in the future and make sure that we had a new platform that would address some of the macro trends that were coming along within the future of work.
You really took me back with Career Builder. I mean, I don't know if we're aging ourselves, Summer. I don't mind because we're all in this journey together.
Yes,
but I do remember Career Builder.
Job boards.
Wow, so crazy how far we've come. And you know, Cincinnati is an entrepreneurial town. So when you talk about startups, have you seen a lot of support from the startup community?
Yes. I always talk about being blessed to have the community that we have here. I have other women that I mentor, and we mentor each other. We meet every 2 weeks, and there are other female founders of tech companies, and if I didn't have them, I don't think I could handle the journey that I've been through thus far and into the future.
Yeah, well, we'll have the opportunity to plant more of those seeds on February 24th at Mentoring Monday. We're really looking forward to seeing hopefully all of you there. Thanks again for joining us this morning for First Financial Biz Beat. A heads up, you can catch us next week at 11:30 a.m. on Star 64. For business news around the clock, visit thebusinesscourier.com, follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and sign up for our daily emails. I'm Kyla Woods. Have a great weekend.